Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Semea, and I'm a business advisor with Connecticut's Small Business Development Center. I owned and operated 2 restaurants for over 10 years, and I will be our moderator for today's webinar. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Our focus today will be on the financial and operational considerations for reopening restaurants as the state of Connecticut enters its first phase of reopening. The Connecticut Small Business Development Center, or Connecticut SBDC, is part of a nationwide network with a mission of helping small businesses to start and grow in our state. We're a resource partner and an advising arm of the Small Business Administration and are funded through a cooperative agreement between the SBA, the State of Connecticut's Economic and Community Development, and the University of Connecticut. Connecticut SBDC provides no-cost professional and confidential advising and training to entrepreneurs and small businesses, leveraging public, private, and academic resources, which include robust research and analytic tools. To request assistance, just go to the CTSBDC.com page and click the big yellow COVID-19 Business Advising button. Now, I'm very excited to bring this program to you, featuring a terrific panel that will share their insights into the financial and operational considerations for restaurant reopening. I'll introduce our panel in a moment, but first, I'd like to go over a few house rules. This call will be recorded. No one's image will be seen and no one's names will appear apart from our panelists and myself. We have muted everyone except our speakers. If you'd like to just double check and make sure that you are in fact muted and don't unmute yourself, that would be a big help. We'd love to have this be more interactive, but with such a large crowd, that would unfortunately be untenable. However, we will be taking questions via the Q&A feature on Zoom. We'll do our best to address as many questions as we go through the presentations today, and also we'll save some time at the end for Q&A. Thank you for your consideration. Now I'd like to introduce our panelists. Tommy Hyde is the Director of Government Affairs and Special Projects at Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development. Good morning, Tommy. Connor Geary is a longtime restaurant professional, currently leading strategy and operations at Square Peg Pizzeria in Glastonbury. Mark Moeller is a longtime restaurant owner and consultant and owns the restaurant consulting firm A Recipe of Success. And Matt Nemeth is one of our advisors here at the Connecticut SBDC. Panel, I will be moderating, but if we're on a topic and you'd like to add something, or if I direct a question to someone else and you have some insights, please do share. We will start with Tommy Hyde, who in his role as Director of Government Affairs and Special Projects with DECD has been instrumental in developing state guidance to businesses during the COVID-19 crisis. Prior to working with DECD, Tommy served as a special assistant to the governor. He earned a bachelor's degree from Trinity College in 2013 and an MBA from UConn in 2019. Tommy, welcome. I think you'd like to start by highlighting some of the guidelines for the restaurant reopening. Shall I share your slides now?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much, Steve. And thank you to the other panelists, SBDC, and all the viewers today for having me on here to discuss this important topic. As Steve mentioned, we do work closely with the SBDC, and they are great partners to the state. Steve, I think there we go. Okay. Again, my name is Tommy Hyde, and I am the Director of Government Affairs and Special Projects for the Department of Economic and Community Development. For really the past 2 months, our department has been extremely focused on the response to this virus. Whether that was working to create the essential, non-essential business list, working with DPH to come up with guidance for essential businesses and safe store rules, or providing the bridge loan to thousands of Connecticut companies, which we're hoping to finalize by the end of this week, by the way. Unlike many other states, including our neighbors, New York and Massachusetts, we did not uniformly shut down the entire economy, but took a methodical approach that allowed many businesses to stay open. For example, we never shut down manufacturing, we never shut down construction, real estate, and several other industries that our neighboring states did. And now, as many of you know, and hence why we are having this discussion, we at the state, in partnership with the Reopen team, are really focused entirely on the reopening in a way that helps our economy bounce back quickly, but more importantly, ensures our public is protected. We know and understand this is going to take some time, which is why we're approaching this in 3 phases. As you all know, phase 1 starts tomorrow and includes offices, although we are still encouraging folks to work from homes. It also includes outdoor dining, which is going to be a big topic today, obviously, retail, outdoor zoos and museums, and outdoor recreation with less than 5 people. Originally, this had also included hair salons and barber shops, but I'm sure many of you saw the announcement yesterday that these are going to be pushed to June 1st. And I'm sure many of you can tell by my beard and very long hair that this was somewhat disappointing to me, as I'm sure it was to many of you on the call as well. Going forward, I think you can expect an announcement on phase 2 and phase 3 reopenings potentially tomorrow. And phase 2 right now, as I'm sure many of you are aware, it's slated sometime between June 20th and July 1st. And really, this is going to depend on the data. You know, what happens when we open up? Are things going really well? We might be able to move that up a little sooner. But if things are maybe staying the same or getting a little bit worse, it might be a little bit further out into July 1st. And then we can expect phase 3 tentatively sometime after that. Next slide, please. Briefly, you know, I did want to touch on the overarching principles of the strategy we use to reopen the state. You know, for any of you who have read our guidance, this slide should not be new to you, but I do think it is important. As you all are aware, we are in unprecedented times facing an unprecedented task. That is to reopen the state by speeding up the pace of economic, educational, and community recovery, but doing so in a way that protects public health and the citizens of Connecticut. As you can see, public health was the first principle, as well as ensuring the decisions that were made, ensuring that the decisions we made were science-led and data-driven for the second. Third was prepared. You know, we really needed to make sure we had adequate protections and PPE in place, as well as making sure we had hospital capacity before we opened up. We also knew that we would need a robust tracking and tracing program, which I know the state has spent a lot of time on and is ready to roll out, and that's more with the Department of Public Health. Fourth was choice, which is something we want to emphasize. And while we realize some folks might think it's too early to open their business, we wanted to be able to provide the option and the flexibility to businesses that do want to restart under our very strict rules at this point in time. And the last point is that this is going to be dynamic. You know, this is a virus we're still learning a lot about. We're still tracking it. We're still putting out methods to try and understand how it is transmitted and what therapeutics are helpful at stopping the virus and helping people. As we learn more about the virus, what you will likely see is that we are going to change our rules. And I think you will see this from other states as well. So it's important that we keep over communicating, but at the same time, you're going to see more information that is going to inform our decision-making process as we move into additional phases. You know, I will note for the essential business and the guidance that did follow after that, those rules were changed typically right after they went out because we would get an abundance of feedback and a lot of it made sense. And, you know, some of it obviously didn't. So, you know, I do want to stress that, you know, a lot of these rules are dynamic. You know, the CDC is still putting out more information. Other states are putting out more information. And we are going to change based on best practices that we find out in the marketplace. Next slide, please. Again, I know many of you have already seen this, but I do think it's important to touch on our very strict guidelines for business operations and societal interactions for those that will be allowed to open in phase 1. The general restrictions that cover all phase 1 businesses include a strict 50% capacity on reopening, along with strict cleaning and disinfection protocols in all settings. Again, we are encouraging people to work from home if they can. Obviously, this might not be able to happen that much in the restaurant industry, but for other businesses, you know, if you don't have to go to work, you should be staying home at this time, or working from home, I should say. High-risk individuals should stay home as well. Face masks should be worn at all times in public, and social gatherings are going to be strictly limited to a maximum of 5 people throughout phase 1. I also wanted to touch on some of the restaurant-specific guidelines, as I know it's very important for our listeners today. You know, all employees are going to be required to wear a face mask or cloth face covering that completely covers the nose and mouth. Gloves and eye protection is required when using cleaning chemicals. You know, the public health team actually really emphasized this fact because, you know, as we've seen a more robust cleaning effort, we've also seen an uptick in related injuries. You know, people misusing or overusing chemicals. So it's really important that you're keeping your customers safe because we know they are going to be interacting with these chemicals more regularly. We also really want to stress that if you do not have the proper PPE for your employees, and you know you cannot meet the guidelines, you should not be opening right now. You know, these are strict rules that have been put in place and must be followed. Last, and obviously your customers must wear a mask at all times, except when they are eating. This includes moving around the restaurant, going to the bathroom, and while waiting for their food to be delivered. I do want to stress, by no means is this slide all encompassing, but be sure to check out our website. I'm sure you all have, but to the extent you haven't, to read through the full list of our guidelines. Next slide, please. I also wanted to touch quickly on the setup of your business, as I know this is new to all of you, although hopefully many of you, again, are all ready to go for tomorrow's opening. I really think we cannot underscore enough the importance of signage. While you and your team have prepared your space and have studied these rules in depth, I can assure you most of the general public have not. Many will not know what to expect when they walk into your restaurant for the first time. And I'm sure similar to grocery stores, when we instituted one-way aisles and other procedures, we know there's going to be an adjustment period, and signage is really one of the best ways to ensure both your employees and customers are staying safe. The rearranging of your tables is not only to keep your customers safe, obviously, but also your employees. Keeping 6 feet apart from keeping your employees 6 feet apart is obviously best practice, but we also don't want your staff, specifically your waiters, bumping into tables and chairs and other people who might be moving about to use the restroom facility or something else. As you know, all non-essential amenities and buffets should be closed. And while we specifically put out there dance floor, pool tables, and playgrounds, I do want to stress things like giant Jenga, dartboards, cards and playing games, and even cornhole for potentially some of you, the breweries and wineries out there or other restaurants, should not be allowed as well in the restaurant, and customers should not be using these types of things. As for menus, you should limit the amount of paper menus to the most extent possible. Obviously, we understand in some cases that's not going to be able to happen, but to the extent you can use large boards or encourage people to use their phones to check out your menu and order, those are best practices. And then, of course, as you know, silverware should be rolled or packaged, and condiments should be single use only. Next slide. And then finally, I did want to take the opportunity to remind those businesses on the call that have not yet self-certified, you do need to self-certify before reopening. This is a requirement of the state. As of last night, we've had over 1,300 restaurants that have self-certified and 6,200 businesses in general. Coming out with this, I believe, was over the weekend. So we have seen a quick uptick in this. And then some of you might have saw yesterday on the news or on the television news or in the news that we have come out with small business reopening guidelines. That effort was led by Gwendolyn Thames, who is our deputy commissioner, Lisa Tepper Bates, and Sheila Hummel, who works at DECD as well, and chaired by Lyle Ray. And this can be found right on the self-certification page, which I put a bunch of arrows down below that you'll see, or you can go to DECD's website and it'll be the first link that you see. This guide includes valuable information, a list of financing resources and advisory partners to help small businesses secure the financial support they need to manage reopening challenges. It can help companies identify general and industry-specific trainings and help answer questions like who should be trained and what kinds of training they need. It offers suggestions to help small businesses maintain their operations while applying new standards for health and safety. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, because we do hear out there quite often, there's a short supply of PPE, there's a short supply of hand sanitizer. It has a list of geographically based suppliers to help you find protective equipment and other new supplies as well. So again, I would encourage all of you to take a look at that before opening. And I should mention that in order to self-certify for those who haven't, I did include the website right above there. It's business.ct.gov/recovery. And then the last thing you'll notice on the right side of my presentation, again, for those of you who have already certified, and although it's not mandatory, the self-certification badge, which you'll see on the right side of the screen, and although it's not mandatory, we are encouraging to display this badge in your window, door, social media page, or other places to help instill confidence out in the market. Confidence is really important as everyone wants to stay safe. We've actually done a lot of surveying on the CT consumer, and there's a lot of anxiety out there, which is both understandably and justifiably so. And I'm sure you're hearing it as well. And Some of you might have done this on your own, quick surveys of your customers. But as we bring back the economy, it's really important everyone embraces these rules, because that is what is going to give the consumer confidence to visit your restaurant and retail establishment. With that, I'll hand it back over to Steve, and I'll be on for any questions that might have come up or will come up in the end. Thanks all.
Thank you, Tommy. A couple of quick questions that did come up. One is it, just to be clear, it's business.ct.gov/recovery. That's the site that they should go to for self-certification?
Correct. You could also go to DECD's website, and so the first one is the small business guidelines. The second link is going to be the link to the sector rules, where you'll find specific rules for restaurants, and then you'll also find a link to get you to the self-certify page as well on that page. Okay,
next question. This may not be fair because you may not know the statistics, but you said 1,300 restaurants have already self-certified. Do you have any feel for what % of the total restaurants in Connecticut that is that are actually moving forward with reopening right away?
Yeah, it is a great question. I don't have the statistic off the top of my head. We do know that some restaurants, obviously restaurants have been allowed to stay open this entire time, and we do know some aren't going to be ready to open tomorrow, and might want to wait a week or two to kind of see how it goes and learn some additional best practices. So it is really hard to say at this time. Unfortunately, I do not know. And then we also know there are a lot of restaurants out there that simply aren't going to be able to offer this outdoor service, whether it's a lack of outdoor space. I live in Hartford, and I know the municipalities are working very closely with the restaurants to kind of expand where they can set up tables, but geographically, some restaurants, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense for them to open at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Tommy. Next up, let me stop sharing that slideshow for a moment. Next up is Connor Geary, who's been in the hospitality industry for over a decade, managing first at City Steam Brewery. He ran the bar, comedy club, and marketing, and after 3 years took a role as manager of the new Ted's Montana Grill on Front Street. While with Ted's, he was a senior manager and spent time in locations in Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, as well as South Windsor. He's consulted with a variety of restaurants in the greater Hartford area on both marketing and operational initiatives, and has been working with Square Peg Pizzeria since their inception in October 2019. And with the onset of COVID-19, he has helped with the operation day-to-day of the restaurant. Connor, what did you do when people first became aware of COVID-19, and then when the governor ordered all restaurants closed except for takeout and delivery?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate that. And thanks, Tommy, for a great presentation. Everyone, all the viewers, thank you for making this worthwhile, and hope everyone's doing well, and look forward to generating some business back in the state of Connecticut. I also want to give a quick thanks to the SBDC and DECD for all the resources, the time and effort that those teams have put together in making this possible. So, and speaking a little bit about Square Peg Pizzeria, for those of you that might not be familiar with the concept, the establishment is on Hebron Avenue in Glastonbury, and it opened back in October. So we were sort of looking forward to our first real patio season, and then we got into mid-March and everything happened, and we sort of had to really step back and evaluate very strategically what our plan was going to be. We were in a very fortunate position to have inherited in our building space a drive-through window. And so for the past 8 weeks, the operation, the takeout operation, has been executed through handing entrees and salads and pizzas to people through a window, just like they would get a coffee or a donut. That has left us in a very fortunate and convenient spot, in terms of just ourselves. But in talking about how COVID-19 impacted the business, on top, forget about just closing the doors, a real strategic look at, our health and safety measures, how we were going to handle the re-onboarding of staff, which is still ongoing, even going into tomorrow, obviously, and we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that. But we really brought all of the players to the table, and not just restaurant people. I think that's been one of the things that has been a strength for us, is we brought to the table people with kind of strategy from other industries to come in and talk to us, friends of ours in the business world, about what they're doing. and using some people who aren't so ingrained into the habits that we find ourselves in restaurants has been really beneficial to coming up with ways to be efficient, be safe, be creative, market ourselves well, and ultimately be able to share a product with outdoor dining starting tomorrow. So that's kind of how we've looked at things, and we feel well positioned. A lot of work to do today, but we feel well positioned going into tomorrow.
And how have you fared in the takeout and delivery portion of this? I know you and I spoke briefly before the call, and you said you were fortunate that you started to get the brand out, but have you been able to make ends meet, to put it simply?
Yeah, absolutely. We made a very conscious decision right at the onset of the closures to spend some money on advertising. We actually created a video commercial and put it out in about a 4-town radius adjacent to Glastonbury, and marketed the drive-through window exclusively as kind of the convenient way to get pizza. And that was an absolute home run in terms of its returns. We've seen a steady increase in business week over week in general, a little dip around the Easter week, but in general, week over week has been strong. And that's put us in a position where we are able to make ends meet. And as we said to all of our guests who came through the window, you know, the goal of this is to get to the other side, really, and be able to bring our staff back on and have a restaurant to offer people. You know, had we not taken advantage of that, had we not made some hard decisions about menu, had we not kind of reestablished the way we were going to offer pizza and other products, which we did. I mean, we tweaked the menu, we changed size offerings, we thought a little more consciously about family dining and dining habits at home as opposed to when you just come out for a date night or a happy hour, and started some new product offerings as well. And that was a real savior for us. And again, our ability to do it, you know, our take on curbside, which was you pull up to the curb and we don't even have to go out and hand you anything, I think made it really convenient on work nights. People, you know, who live in and around Glastonbury, just picking something up on their way home. It made it really convenient during inclement weather as well, too. Weather, of course, being a whole nother curveball for patio dining. But yes, to answer your question, it has been successful, and we've been very well supported by the community, and a number of stories of families who, you know, are kind of pinballing to their different restaurants has been, you know, if they have the means to do so, has been really empowering. And we've made weekly regulars, people who put their same order in at the same time on the same day every week, who had never had square peg prior to COVID-19. So the upside is very optimistic for us right now.
Great. And you also told me you did have to go through some real analysis of your outdoor space, what you could do, what you couldn't do, and also of your menu. Can you just talk a little bit, so, you know, especially things that might help other restaurateurs think through it, of what you thought through and what you ended up doing? Specific.
Sure, absolutely. So again, if you're not familiar with the space, we have a patio that I'm sitting on right now, so I apologize for any chirping birds and trucks that drive by. But we have a semicircle that sort of abuts out from the side of the building. It has a fire pit. It's all fenced in. And one of the things that we did was kind of really put on our thinking caps in terms of, okay, what if we did this differently? If we were creating the patio from day one, and we wanted to be as efficient as possible and as safe as possible, how could we achieve that? And so we did a few things. One is we looked at the traffic flow. We're fortunate to have two outdoor entrances and then one that goes into the building itself. So there's actually 3 points of entrance on our patio. One is dedicated for entrance, and one is dedicated for egress. So we're able to achieve that off the rip. The other thing that we did is we actually took a step back and said, our furniture is kind of bulky. Like patio furniture in general tends to maybe be a little bit on the bulky side. And what if we rethought our furniture? So we slimmed down tables. We're actually moving tables from inside, more of our deuces, and combining them and getting rid of our big bulky 48 inch tables from the patio. And that allows us to be a lot more efficient and not only conserve space, but ensure that we have adequate space in between guests. We don't know, you know, not that any business ever really knows how many people are going to walk in, but we really don't know what's going to happen in terms of patio dining. So that opens up, you know, how do you staff? How do you schedule? How do you prep? How do you order? How do you order on Tuesday and then all of a sudden the weather forecast looks crappy right at 6 o'clock on a Friday night? What does that mean for product and waste and labor and all of those kinds of things? So we wanted to be as nimble as possible. We wanted to accommodate as many smaller groups as possible, ensure that no table is able to be set for more than 5 guests. And so we've actually pulled all the patio furniture off the patio, pulled our indoor furniture onto the patio, and become a lot more efficient. Then we went around and we literally measured and blocked out with tape what those bubbles look like to ensure that we're meeting all requirements, but understand where we have flexibilities. One of the things, Tommy, I was thinking about as you were presenting, and this is going to be critical for us as we start tomorrow and go onwards, is also not only signage for the guest, but constant training and constant communication and feedback to and from our staff. Helping them who maybe haven't been in the building for the last few weeks understand the thought process, have them watch some of the training videos, walk them through why we're doing things a certain way, make sure that they've digested those elements. We have, I've created a few, so I'd be happy to share this with anybody, but I have a new server script. So every time a server goes over to the table, they're going to be able to introduce some of these new concepts to our guests. What does contactless payment look like? What are the payment options? Plasticware and disposables for your dining experience as opposed to china and glassware. Letting the guest know that the staff member will be in a mask and gloves throughout the duration of service, is something that I want to communicate to the guests, because I don't know that everyone will have that. We have bulked up on gloves. We have bulked up on hundreds and hundreds of masks. So we're prepared from a PPE standpoint. Again, one of the fortunate elements of having been in operation for the last 8 weeks is that we've been able to kind of, gear up for this process. We've established new cleaning logs for the facilities so that our guests have confidence. We're going to be setting a timer in the restaurant so that every 20 to 30 minutes, hand washing, glove change, restroom checks are all done. And so we keep a consistent, expected, high level of cleaning and sanitation. All these different habits are things that are going to start tomorrow for us, but they're important to have on day one so that it can be adopted as what everyone's referring to as our new normal, at least for the time being. And then lastly, to the extent that, you sort of brought this up, Tommy, social media and communication, we'll be putting out later today kind of our doctrine, to our guests, our promise. We are self-certified. We have taken the Connecticut Restaurant Association promise as well too. And it's bullet points and kind of just a little discussion of the fact that we are going to open. We understand if now's not the right time to come back to Square Peg Pizzeria, and we totally respect that. We do feel that we can provide a safe, enjoyable, efficient, clean environment for guests who do decide to dine with us for outdoor seating. And setting those expectations in our messaging to our guests will start later on this morning as soon as this call concludes. So that's a little bit of kind of how we put the toppings on the pizza, so to speak, come to the conclusion of what we're going to be doing.
No, thank you, Connor. Obviously, you took a very thoughtful approach to it, and I appreciate it. I know that you're just scratching the surface with the level of detail that you've gone through, but I appreciate it. I think there were some very useful specifics that you went through that other folks can apply, and also just the thought process, clearly the level of detail. And to that point, I want to continue with Mark Moeller. Mark, who's owned and operated 4 restaurants in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, as I mentioned, he currently focuses most of his time on the Recipe of Success, a nationally recognized consulting firm that embraces a hands-on consulting philosophy, which is really important these days, and an entrepreneurial spirit, which has helped over 150 clients in the last 20 years. A Recipe of Success specializes in both launching new restaurants and with turnarounds for struggling and financially distressed operations by bringing fresh ideas for every aspect of the restaurant. And boy, if there was ever a time that needed some fresh ideas to address challenges, Mark, it's been now. So tell us a little bit. In your consultancy, you must have seen and heard different things from different restaurant operators. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the different situations you've encountered?
Oh, absolutely. And first, thank you, everybody. And Tommy and Connor, that's some great information that you provided. And a lot of people should definitely take heed to it. Restaurant industry has always been a challenge. And when we have to pivot, we're very great at shifting and making that pivot on a daily basis because our consumer demands it. But this has been a challenge. There are a lot of restaurants out there that didn't know what to do. I think the most successful ones are the ones that took the approach that really Connor, you've taken, is they've put some really good thought energy to the reflection and how we're going to pivot and make the adjustment in order to be successful. We've had restaurants that didn't do takeout and delivery before, but they want to stay in business. They want to give back to the community. So we sat down with them and took a hard look at their menu and said, well, what do we change without changing your brand? What do we change that will now last more than, the 5 minutes that you're supposed to have in order to begin consuming? When you're doing a pickup and delivery, you've got to figure out how that food is going to last 15, 20, 30 minutes before it's going to be consumed without ruining the integrity. And that has been a huge focus of things that I've worked with both clients and non-clients. And then the other thing they're really focused on is making sure they understood they had to get the word out. First of all, they had to tell people that they were still open. They had to get they had to get the ability out and utilize the social media, use a public relations folks that they knew, and take it from, 5 times a week that they were on social media and take it up to, 15, 20, 30 times. Because again, it was about getting that message out. And I think that's been the most critical point. And the people that have used a strategy similar to that have been the ones that have been most successful.
That's great. And what are some of your clients planning? Do you have some clients who do have outdoor capacity, and do you have any that had to negotiate with municipalities to figure out what space they might be able to use?
So on both sides. So we've had some people who had limited outdoor dining that they're looking to expand. They're working with the municipalities, and they're really working with the health department to understand what they have to do in order to change that. And so far, all the towns that I've spoken to, both on the business and health side, have been very accommodating, really trying to help push this through. So we have people that are taking over part of the parking lots, where they're adding anywhere from 40 to 80 seats outside with social distancing, which is pretty spectacular. This business is not geared to operate on 50% capacity. We're just not. We can't break even at that. That number is closer to 70%, and some a little bit higher. So the ability to be able to get some outdoor dining and then come back and be able to open up and serve the community is going to be key. And the expansion of the outdoor dining as well has been a challenge because there's just not a lot of space out there. And so the landlord who have been most part great as well, you still, when you're taking over, infringing on somebody else's territory, it gets tough to negotiate.
And, you'd mentioned, adjusting the menu, obviously, for takeout and delivery because certain things travel better than others, and you don't want to have your brand diluted by, delivering subpar food when you know what great food you're making when it's taken straight to the table. What other menu considerations have you helped restaurants through, whether it's, costing or limiting the selection so that they're able to better operate in these, with limited kitchen staff potentially, and also given the potential vagaries of the weather with outdoor dining?
So we've gone back and taken a hard look at the menu, not only what they did pre-COVID, but what they're doing now. And the goal here is to minimize the touch points. We have to make sure that the labor can keep up. And you mentioned, Stephen, being limited labor is key because labor is such a huge impact to our business. So simple ingredients, items that can be easily produced in a fast period of time. And then we go into the structural integrity of that product to make sure that it's going to last. We've gone back and renegotiated with the vendors to say, look, we're in a rough time, so are you. How are we going to work together? What is it that we're going to do either on a permanent basis or a temporary basis to get product moving from your door, from the distributor, through our door to our guest door? So it's been a lot of give and take, and it's a lot of partnerships. This business was, again, built on partnerships, and we just continue to grow on those.
That's great. If you don't mind, expand on that a little bit. What have your clients been able to do or either learn from vendors and partners, or what have they been able to change in the way that they work with them that better fits these times?
They've learned how to communicate. They learn to listen to each other, right? And listen, all relationships are built on communication. If you've got good communication, whether it's a landlord, whether it's a distributor, or your guest, you're going to be more successful than if you just have your ego in place and saying my way is the right way, and you have to do business the way I want to do it. And
I don't think restaurateurs generally have egos, do they, Mark?
No, not at all. But really, it's been a two-way street, and they've gotten the ability now to listen to each other. We've got vendors that are bringing in product that has to get moved. The question is it equal quality to what they had before? Is it better quality? And are they able to get that better quality to deliver to the guest and then carry that through to go post-COVID as well?
Great. Last question is getting to be a specific one, and I'll throw this out also, Connor, if you want to chime in. As far as getting both PPE and cleaning supplies, have your restaurants been able to get them through their traditional supply chain? Have they had to go outside of that?
They've done both. So we've been talking about gathering PPE for anybody that was looking to open up post-COVID. We didn't know when that was going to be, so they started to secure it through the normal chain. whether it was through local distributors, US Foods, Cisco's of the world, Globe Equipment here, BFA, Samtel, M. Tucker, all of these companies have been slowly working on bringing in their PPP supply. So we've been building on that. They have had to go outside as well, and they work towards the online sources to
Okay.
Yeah.
Connor, do you have a similar experience or something different?
Yeah, so right at the outset, we went through an outside channel to just physically obtain some and bring it into the restaurant. Once that subsided and we kind of were dwindling on that supply, we were able to have enough lead time through our typical suppliers to get some in. I would also tell you that it was a benefit that we were operating the entire time with other orders as well from those suppliers. So, that was helpful for us. But we have plenty, and we've never wanted for any since week one.
That's very encouraging. Thank you. Mark, last question for you. So you're a consultant, you have a broad view of the business. Is there anything that you'd like to share as far as the medium and long-term view for the industry? Not just, till we say that the state's fully reopened, but beyond that.
So yes, so everything that we're doing now is we're rethinking the concept, and we're not being short-sighted. We understand that at some point we're going to go back to something semi-normal pre-COVID. So any changes, any decisions that we're making today, we're saying, how does it impact our business today? And how are we going to ease back in when we can to get to that post-COVID? We're never going to be what that normal was. And that's probably a really good thing, because there's a lot of restaurants out there and businesses for that matter, that just haven't been operating at the highest level that they can. Now we're being forced to focus on the details even more so than we ever did before. And I think that there's going to be a huge benefit to restaurants that if they pay attention to the details today, they're going to come out of it. So really put together that strategy and that plan. And Connor, you walked through it perfectly before, which is fantastic to hear, because if you don't have a plan in place and you don't have benchmarks and milestones to hit, you're going to fall short. And you can't fall short in a day like today, or an age today. Because in the past, if you had a misstep, okay, we can get past it. You can't have a misstep in COVID. God forbid there was an issue with somebody contracting COVID that can be traced back. You're just not going to recover from that.
Great point, Mark. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insights. We'll circle back during Q&A. But for now, I want to move over to Matt Nemeth. Matt's a business advisor with Connecticut SBDC and has been focused on food and beverage in the Eastern Connecticut region for the past 7 years. He currently lives in the Quiet Corner, and he also owns a food business with his wife, Jen. Matt enjoys spending his free time with his two boys, Arlo and Winton. I imagine you've spent quite a lot of time with them over the past couple of months.
Yeah.
Matt, you're in a unique position. You're an advisor to a number of restaurant clients, and you own your own ice cream shop. So what have you done to work through these issues and just figuring out the economics of it, is in addition to the operations? We've heard more about the operational side of things and a little bit about practical economic considerations like menu selections. What can you tell us about what you've thought through and what you're helping clients through?
Yeah, so I think the best thing that I've done is taken a really slow approach, and you really want to make sure you do a proper cash flow analysis of every little detail before you make any major decisions. Because the ultimate price that you're going to pay is consumers. So if you can keep consumer confidence up, you're going to be able to maintain good cash flow. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to have people come in and buy your product, right? So a couple of things that I've done, in building my business model, and trying to counsel as many clients as I can about this, is the introduction of technology. I think today now, this is something we haven't really brushed on yet today. But, you really need to have good technology in your business. And I see that a lot of my clients that don't have a point of sale that has some sort of way to integrate e-commerce into it, they're not having as easy a time as folks that are out there that have some sort of point of sale that lets them do e-commerce or online orders fairly readily. So a few of the major e-commerce platforms are cloud-based now. We used to use Micros or PosiTouch or Harbor Touch, all of these old standards in the industry. But now a lot of folks are going towards Toast or the Squares of the world, or, you know, even Clover just came out with a new type of platform. And most of these platforms offer that type of online touch that you're able to let folks access. So what that's going to do is it's going to also free up your phone lines. So if you're doing curbside delivery and you're having, you know, 500 people call you at a time, now you're going to be able to alleviate a lot of that stress with just a really simple technology of adding that online aspect for orders. You know, the caveat is that you need to make sure that in your cash flow analysis, you're accounting for the potential cost for these things. You know, there's certainly going to be some added costs for any type of new technology, anything to make yourself, you know, more accessible to the world, both online and in person.
That's a great point. That there are, in fact, Connor mentioned, you know, they put their indoor furniture outside, and I've heard other folks talking about having to buy different furniture and obviously putting up partitions and various things. What other investments have you been working through with either your business or with your clients?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to make sure you invest in your employees. You know, going back to what Connor was saying about the training, I think that's the most important thing, because at the end of the day, your employees are your front line to your customers. So if they're able to communicate clear and concise to your customers, you know, that's also going to boost customer confidence, because you're going to be able to get everybody on board with the fact that this is the new way of doing things. And sometimes that's going to cost a little bit more time, because you may want to have staff meetings. You may want to have extra webinars that you pay for to attend. You know, we're lucky right now that ServSafe has been offering a free COVID training for a while. They actually have the full safe food handler for free as well. You know, so those are things that, you know, it may take 3 or 4 hours for an employee to go through that, but you may want to invest in paying for that employee to do that, so that you have that extra level of confidence when they're talking to each customer.
That's great. And, you know, talking about going through a financial analysis with additional investments, and also, as Mark mentioned, you know, restaurants aren't designed to operate at 50% capacity. How have you been helping your clients work through whether they can be as fortunate as SquarePeg has been, or, you know, and be able to break even or do better during this time, or whether, you know, it might not make sense for them yet? And, you know, what are the tools that you've been able to use, and how do you help them?
So at the SBDC, we have a cash flow analysis tool called the Bottom Line, and that's pretty much the gold standard for me. I work through that with every single client. We go through the ins and the outs. That's what I call them. Whatever's coming in and whatever's going out, and we're able to produce a 3-year cash flow projection. Even though it's a little much for right now, I'd rather just look at the next 6 months to maybe 9 months. But we can certainly use that tool, and it's a fairly quick analysis that we can perform and say, you know what, this is doable. Or, you know, maybe we should wait a little bit longer, or maybe we should cut back on X, Y, or Z. Because, you know, whatever we think we're going to get for customers, I like to say, you know, why don't you cut that in half? Because I like to make projections as conservative as possible. That's
a great point. Now, you mentioned that it's fast, and I think for some of us, you know, spreadsheets are kind of fun, and others, they're a little bit intimidating. When you were helping a client through this, and you say fast, what does that mean? How is this, you know, one online session that you're able to do with them, or what does it really entail?
It can be. It depends on how readily available folks have their numbers. You know, if they understand their sales, I would say most restaurant owners know their numbers fairly well. You know, maybe there's some minute details in spending that they don't know as well, or percentages that they don't know as well. But most folks that I come across are able to say, this is exactly how much I'm making an hour. So that makes it easier to go through these and say, all right, well, let's get all your bills together, put your monthly bills together, and then let's pull a report from your point of sale if they happen to have that. You know, that could take a couple hours, maybe 2 weeks for us to go through that, or it can just really simply be a 1-hour session, just like this on a Zoom meeting or even on the phone. You know, we don't even have to use the tool sometimes for folks to make a decision. I think that restaurant owners are pretty good at making decisions on the fly, especially for pretty low threshold investments. If they think they're going to be able to buy 3 picnic tables at $200 a pop and increase whatever they were going to be able to offer before, then I think that that's an easy decision. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be with a spreadsheet. We can just go through the numbers and, folks can certainly bounce ideas off of us as well.
Right. I have to say, I've used the bottom line tool as well, and it is a very easy to use, powerful tool. So it can make what's an intimidating blank spreadsheet, relatively easy, to fill in. So, I do encourage folks who are listening to this who might want some assistance running through their financials to contact us, and we'll get through how to do that in just a moment. You mentioned touchless payment a moment ago. If someone is actually, not going to one of the online platforms like Uber Eats, which we know take very large percentages and are trying to avoid that, how are you and how are others integrating the touchless payment into their regular, non-online service orders?
So again, a lot of the newer platforms actually have this as an automatic feature. And most of them, you can actually install the app right on a tablet or a phone. So you're actually able to go out to a car and do a chip or whatever you're going to do. At the end of the day, a lot of people still are spending cash. People, if you cannot take cash, that's probably the best advice, obviously. But you're certainly able to add, I would say Toast, Square, Clover, many of the other point of sales have this option already. So you don't have to have an e-commerce set up already. You can just use existing hardware that they give you.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off that really quickly, Stephen. So we do utilize Toast at SquarePeg, and while it's sort of nails on a chalkboard from a hospitality experience, I think I've gotten over that very quickly. We have tablets that you can ship, just like Matt was talking about. One of the things, I contacted the rep of ours and said, hey, how are you handling a true contactless payment, though? That maybe doesn't require signature, but is still a protected payment source. And so what they offered us, and we've enabled just last week, was now every receipt will print out a QR code on it individual to that check. And so when the server presents that check, the guest can take a picture from their smartphone. They don't need a special app. They can do it right from their camera, and it will bring up their receipt and allow them to pay right from their device table side without having to handle a tablet or hand anyone a credit card or quite frankly, even touch the receipt, as long as the server's holding it with their gloves. So those options are out there, and I would suggest that is as economically beneficial as it is kind of that hurdle that guests need to get over in terms of their safety, their comfort, which hopefully in time that turns into repeat business.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just going to share a single slide that you put together, Matt, as we transition over to some questions. But thank you again for sharing, what you're doing and the lessons that you've not only learned, but that you've been helping others with along the way. So I'm just going to leave that up there, and sorry about that. Give me 2 seconds to get to the right slide. Points to consider. It's, as you said, take it slow, do a cash flow analysis. You can get help with that cash flow analysis from the SBDC. Just as, has been mentioned a couple times, including by Mark, vendor and suppliers, work with them. Price analysis on that, as well as communication. There really is a huge interaction with the customer, and this is something we haven't touched on as much. And Matt, if you want to comment at all on that point about the customer, the mental toll on customer non-compliance, complaints, unempathetic attitudes, and I'm going to transition that into a question after you do talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely something to think about, and this is sort of, an intangible cost that you need to also consider, because as everybody's reopening, we've all read articles of other states and other places where customers seem to boil over a little bit quicker than normal. So we need to be prepared for that. And one of the best things that that I always tell my clients is use a sign. Going back to what Connor was saying earlier, is signage is your best friend. If you can point to a sign and say, I'm not the one saying this, but it's the sign that's saying this, it's a way of sort of diverting attention. I mean, that's why the military has standard operating procedures for everything. So, at the end of the day, you're able to say, well, this is an operating procedure and here's a sign, it's written down. And people will kind of calm down if they're able to see that, and it's communicated effectively through signage. So that's certainly going to be an extra cost. But hopefully that will help sort of alleviate some of that mental stress that we're going to go through.
And as you said, there are going to be people, as there always are, that if 99.9% of people comply and do everything they can, there's still going to be some people, possibly in every single establishment out there, that aren't complying. Some guests. Obviously, you can work with your staff, but what advice do we have for dealing with guests? I'll throw that out to anyone, and also ask Tommy as a follow-up if you have any insight as to what is expected of the restaurant from a reporting point of view for if guests are non-compliance.
So I'll start real quick. I think the best way is non-complimentary behavior. So if somebody's boiling over at you, kill them with kindness. I really do think that that's a really great way to change a situation. So I try to encourage all my clients to just really, hold their ground and just try to be as nice as possible, because we're all in this together, and you don't know how somebody else's day was. But if you can just try to let them, air their grievance and just try to make the situation right, and maintain customer service, maintain your composure. The 3 C's are always my favorite thing: remain cool, calm, and collected. I know that's very, very, very difficult, but I think that's the best thing that folks can do right now.
Yeah, I think I think Matt's absolutely right. Obviously, de-escalation, it should always be kind of the first shot at this. But to that extent, if people are unruly, if people do not want to follow the rules, you have every right to ask them to politely leave. If they refuse, you could obviously call the police and have them come and escort the customer out of your restaurant. We are in unprecedented times, and we understand that the business owners are going through a lot. Your employees are going through a lot, and some of the customers might be concerned if there's unruly customers. So you would absolutely have the ability to refuse service or have that person removed from your establishment.
Yeah, and just another quick note. I mean, I think tone is really critical from the outset. The tone of the service staff. The notion that we are. Listen, I think there's a lot of humanity at play here. I recognize the notion that maybe people who are willing to come out, maybe looking for, a little more compliance and things like that. Or again, the other side of that, people feel like, hey, I don't, this is all too much, and we shouldn't have to do this, and you can't tell me what to do. I mean, the oldest adage in hospitality is the customer is always right. And I had a supervisor once who said the customer is always right, and even if they're wrong, they'll never know it because we won't treat them that way. This is a little different. I think about the ice cream shop on Cape Cod, Matt. You might know about that. The poor girl who quit on the spot, and they shut business back down again because of the attitudes of patrons. And not that I want to feel overly empowered to give any pushback, but I do think we have to stand up for our standards, our staff. We're inviting them. We're not compelling our staff to come to Square Peg if they don't want to. And the same is true for our guests. I'm not compelling anyone to come here and eat pizza. If you do, we ask that you be considerate, respectful of the environment. We're doing our very best, and I can document that for anyone. But if an appeal to humanity doesn't work, there's going to be other places to dine, and I think that's just a reality, and you never get on that level. But you stick up for your staff, you stick up for your business, you stick up for your protocols, and quite frankly, you stick up for the efforts that SBDC and the state are putting forth as well too. So we're all in this together, and we should act accordingly.
Thank you. We're coming up on the hour. I'm going to ask 1 or 2 real rapid fire questions. We have a lot of good questions. We won't be able to get to them all now, but we'll address them. I'll tell you how in just a moment. One question is, should essential business, and this is for you, Tommy, should essential businesses that never closed go back and self-certify now?
So to the extent you are a restaurant and you're going to kind of move to this outdoor experience and start waiting on people, the answer is yes. If you're a restaurant and you're not ready to do that and you're just going to kind of continue providing takeout, then no, you would not need to. But to the extent you do want to offer outdoor dining experience, you should self-certify, yes.
If a team member is tested positive for COVID-19, does the restaurant have to close for a 2-week period?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is an important one. I saw that, and I just looked through the guidance again. I didn't see anything specific about closing down. I think Mark touched on this. If there's a spread at your restaurant, you might not come back from that. So there are certainly best practices out there of what should you do, and to be safe, you might want to shut down for a week and monitor your employees a little bit closer. But I don't think the state has given specific guidance on what you should do if a team member comes down with COVID-19.
Okay.
And Stephen, real quick on that as well, it's really important that all restaurants do contact tracing. You should be testing your employees, checking their temperatures every day, and the state is giving out free thermometers in order to facilitate that, do that, and track that every single day. And you'll head it off. If somebody has a fever, you can send them home, and they'll be able to monitor their systems. They should go get a test right away.
And where should restaurateurs check or request thermometers or PPE if they're having trouble getting them on their own?
I think Megan shared the website in the chat box, so they should be able to do that right on there.
Terrific. Thank you. And again, unfortunately, we have hit an hour, and I'd like to thank you very much, Tommy, Connor, Mark, and Matt, for joining us, sharing great information, insights, and experience. I hope everyone on this call can join us for the second webinar in the restaurant reopening series. It'll be in about 2 weeks. We're going to focus even more on health and safety as we begin to experience this and begin to live through this reopening. As a participant of this webinar, you will be sent an invitation to join us for the next one as well. I'm going to share one last screen that has some information for you that you can take away just to make sure you've got it handy. There we go. And so if you want to avail yourself of the no-cost advisory services from the Connecticut SBDC, please go to CTSBDC.com. And again, there's going to be a big yellow COVID-19 advising button that you can click. And also, if you have questions that we did not answer, just a quick question and you'd like us to address them, you can send us an email at ctsbdc@uconn.edu. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody. Anybody who have a closing thought that they'd like to share with everybody before we leave?
I just want to reiterate, have a plan. Go at this smartly. Make sure that you're focused on your business. Make the right decisions for that. And I'm going to add one more C. Be consistent in all you do.
Thank you. And again, thank everybody. And thanks, Tommy. I know a lot of these, a lot of the guidance has come right through your office and through your computer. So thanks a lot for all of that. Again, Connor, Mark, Matt, Tommy, thank you. And we will be in touch. And hope we see everybody who's joined us for this webinar on the next one. Take care now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Come grab a pizza. I'm here all day.
Thank you.
I know.